In this video, I want to talk about premarital agreements or prenups. And in particular, I want to talk about the things that can and cannot be placed in premarital agreements. Now, we're going to focus in on Texas law, but one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that even though I'm talking about Texas, Texas is part of or is one of the states that adopted a document called the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act. And if you're in a state that has adopted the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act, then much of what I'm going to be talking about here is going to apply to you. If you're not in one of those states, the information may still be relevant to you, uh, but you're going to need to do some additional research. One of the things that you can discuss in a premarital agreement is the rights and obligations of a party. The way the code in Texas says it is that an agreement may include the rights and obligations of each of the parties in any of the property of either person or both people. So if you've got something that's involving a right or an obligation, then you can address that in a premarital agreement. You can also use your premarital agreement to discuss the control of property. And the way it says it in the Texas Family Code is that the agreement may include the right to buy, sell, use, transfer, exchange, abandon, lease, consume, assign, create a security interest in, encumber, dispose, or otherwise use property. So if you're trying to control property, then you can do that through a premarital agreement. You can also use a premarital agreement to discuss the disposition of property. The agreement may include the disposition of property on separation, on marital dissolution, on death, or on occurrence or non-occurrence of some other event. You can also use a premarital agreement to address the elimination or the modification of spousal support. Some people call it alimony. So if you're dealing with alimony or spousal maintenance, you can use the premarital agreement to address that. And that's a really important point because a lot of people go into marriages without thinking about the possibility of paying spousal maintenance after you've been with a person for a certain number of years. And so addressing that issue with the premarital agreement is really a good idea. You can also use a premarital agreement to address wills and trusts. So the agreement may include provisions about the making of a will, a trust, or other arrangement to carry out the provisions of the agreement. You can also use a premarital agreement to address life insurance issues. A premarital agreement may be used to address ownership rights and disposition of the death benefit from a life insurance policy. A premarital agreement may be used to address what we call choice of law provisions. So a premarital agreement can be used or can include the choice of law governing the construction of the agreement. And that's an issue that is very significant because sometimes a party can be married in one place and then the spouse may move to another state uh, before filing divorce, and the other state may have a different set of laws. And so you want to avoid a situation in which you are dealing with a divorce according to the laws of a state that you didn't live in or you don't know anything about. And so one of the ways that you can do that is through the premarital agreement. It's also important to note there's some miscellaneous provisions, but in particular, the agreement can include any other matter, including personal rights and obligations that are not in violation of public policy or a statute that imposes a criminal penalty. Now, since I've spoken to you about the things that you can include in a premarital agreement or prenup, I think it's also important to discuss some things that are prohibited. These are things that you are not supposed to be able to address through a prenup. There are at least 4 things that you are typically prohibited from putting in a prenup. First, a premarital agreement cannot violate public policy. Second, a premarital agreement cannot adversely affect a child's right to receive child support. Third, a premarital agreement cannot intentionally defraud creditors. Fourth, a premarital agreement cannot waive a spouse's survival benefits under the ERISA laws. If you have any other questions about prenups or premarital agreements, then my contact information is available in the description. You can schedule an appointment. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.